You are listening to the Loida Lewis Podcast, hosted by Loida Nicholas Lewis. She's a trailblazing businesswoman, leader, philanthropist, and the widow of Reginald F. Lewis, the visionary leader who was the first African American to build $1 billion company. With unparalleled determination, Loida Lewis has not only excelled as a successful attorney, but also shaped a $1 billion empire. Following the untimely passing of her husband, Reginald F. Lewis, she took the helm of TLC Beatrice, carving her legacy as a successful business leader. Be inspired and learn from her as she shares her wisdom, the secrets to her success in both business, in love, and in life. Let's live, love, laugh, and learn. With your host, Miss Loida Lewis.
Welcome to the Loida Lewis Podcast. And today I have the honor of presenting to you a friend of long standing, Butch Meily, and because he has his best-selling book, From Manila to Wall Street, An Immigrant's Journey with America's First Black Tycoon. Welcome, Butch. Thank you.
Hi, Loida. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, my first question for the readers is, why did you think you would like to write about your experience with America's First Black Tycoon? Well, for everybody's information, the first Black Tycoon is my late husband, Reginald F. Lewis. So Butch and I have known each other for a long, long time, but I want him to join us on this podcast.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a while. We've lived through life and death over those years. But, Reg Lewis is such a larger-than-life character. And he's been on my mind all these years, even though he passed away in 1993. I just didn't know how to approach it, whether it should be fiction or nonfiction. And it took a long time, maybe longer than it should have. Probably should have written this 30 years ago when more people were aware of him and knew of him, and he was more in the news. But I think part of the idea is to reinvigorate his memory, revive it, and to get more people, both African Americans, Filipino Americans, and mainstream Americans, to know who he was, what he accomplished, and to know him as a human being.
Yes. All right. So for everybody's information, sorry, this is a little bit self-serving. The first book was by my husband.
Good.
Okay. Although he didn't finish it. It was Blair Walker who finished it. Why should white guys have all the fun? In a way, it's sort of like part one. And then 30 years later, much like Butch, my book, Why Should Guys Have All the Fun? So this is like part two. And with Butch Meily coming out with his book, so it's part 3. So ayan. So if you want to know the entire story, maybe from different angles, para bang rush, it's almost like Rashomon.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So buy the third book, part 3. But tell us first.
Buy all 3 books.
Huh?
Buy all 3 books.
Buy all 3 books, yes. But tell us first, you came from Manila.
Yes.
So tell the audience a little bit of your background.
Well, I first came to the States in 1977 as a student, and I wound up at the University of Florida. And from there, I wound up, my career was in public relations. I was in Chicago first, then San Francisco, but my target was always New York, because New York was the mecca for PR people. It's where all the big firms were, a lot of the big companies. And so I worked my way up the ladder here in New York from small public PR firms, which I talk about in the book, and I wound up with Burson Marsteller, which is like the Harvard of PR firms. It's what a lot of people aspire to. It's a blue chip firm. And that's when, and I say this, there are moments in your life when you can look back and say, this was a turning point in your life. And that was when someone called me at my office in Burson Marsteller and told me that she'd gotten my name from a Wall Street Journal reporter who was also a Filipino. And she told me that her husband had a PR problem and to call him and not to worry about it because someday he'd be a big client. And that woman was Loida Lewis. So that really changed my life, that phone call, in so many ways, because then I got to meet him, and the rest is in the book.
Yes. Okay. So now, people who's watching will be interested. How were you able to come to this level of achievement? Where were you? Where were you born? Who were your parents? How did you have that kind of ambition to reach for the top? If you can tell the audience what came, who was Butch Meily before he was Butch Meily?
Well, I was born over in Manila, and my parents were really, their advocacy was marriage counseling. And they're among the first marriage counselors counseling troubled couples. And they really made it into a career, and I think a lot of my values came from them. Maybe some of it came from the school. I went to I don't know if I should mention it, well, Ateneo. I was there for a long time.
Ateneo de Manila is a Jesuit school, and you were there from beginning?
Yes, I was there too long. I was there 16 years.
Okay, so from grade one to high school, more or less.
Prep to college.
Meaning to say, even before you're in kindergarten, you were there already.
Yeah. So it's really a long time. So I guess some of the values came from there. But there's always this drive and ambition, I think, which is important. And when I came to the States, I felt like many Filipinos, it was important to prove yourself. You have to be better than everyone else in order to succeed. And I felt that, as Reg did, I think Reg felt the burden more than I did. But the idea that how you do and how well you do reflects on Filipinos and the Philippines.
There was part of you that want to show America that we are Filipino, but we're good.
Yeah.
Very good.
We're good or better.
Better.
In many cases. And that we're in here to be part of this great country and to take full advantage of it and to be fully involved in it, in all the different processes. So I embraced it. And to be honest, when I got to the U.S., I'd always admired it from afar, but it's my first time to come to the States, and I was impressed. I mean, just like a breath of fresh air.
From the Philippine situation?
Yeah, because the Philippines was sort of we grew up in the 50s and the 60s. It was fairly a repressed society. I mean, whether it's politically, sexually, and so on. And you grew up in this conservative Catholic upbringing. And so I came to the States. It's like opening a door, and where you could say what you want, do what you want. This cousin of mine said, you're free to do anything you want as long as it doesn't affect somebody else.
Negatively.
Yeah. Yeah. So and it was great. I mean, I enjoyed Florida and all the different states. I enjoyed being with Americans.
Yes. First of all, why public relations? Not teaching or not being a lawyer or not being, in human relations.
Well, my father was in advertising, but I didn't want to get into advertising and sell soap. I wanted to get into PR because you sell ideas, you sell institutions, and you sell politicians or whatever it is. I mean, so I said it was more in line with what I wanted to do, that you stood for something. And so that's what I got into. And then I turned out, it's important to be a good writer. So I learned that very quickly. And in one of the smaller PR firms I started in New York, there was a lot of pressure to write quickly. And there's a lot of screaming and yelling, which is typical of New York back then. But I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. But did you encounter any kind of discrimination because you're Asian, you're a person of color, when you were in PR starting off and going from one firm to another?
Well, back then I thought it was pretty open. I don't think there was this what's going on maybe today about the immigration and immigrants. We didn't seem to be a big factor. There weren't that many immigrants or that many Asians really. And New York was pretty open as a society, and I found it very welcoming. But yeah, I mean, I was told, in some firms that I could not work. They would not let me work at certain blue chip PR accounts, mostly investment banks or law firms, because I wasn't white. I mean, basically that's what they said. In fact, I told that to Reg, and he said, "Oh, those guys are dinosaurs." But yeah, I was told that. So that was pretty common. And at the time, if you remember, there were still clubs around where it was either all male or they wouldn't allow Jews in, no blacks. And as part of our 3 books, we talk about the fact that back then African Americans were not allowed to live on Fifth Avenue, which coming from the Philippines, I was just not. I'd watched movies and I'd read articles, but I just wasn't as aware of race as a factor until I came here. I went to school in the south of Florida, it's a little more liberal, but also when I met Reg really opened my eyes to what racism there is, and as I mentioned in the book, he often accused me and Filipinos in general of looking at America with this candy cane vision of America, because we read Look magazine or Newsweek or Time or watched these TV shows and these movies, and we thought it was John Wayne or Jimmy Stewart, but in reality, he opened my eyes to there was still a lot of racism. We had a hard time getting a taxi on Fifth Avenue, and the taxi driver, who was Indian, told us he would rather pick up the white guy standing next to us than let us in his cab, no? And that set Reg off. But in the end, he just said, let's just walk. And then as he was walking away, he told me, "Well, I can see you'll be a lot of help in a fight." Because I guess he expected me to jump in and do something, but I was just like kind of surprised. This is Fifth Avenue, New York. There's an Indian cab driver, but it was pretty clear he didn't want to have a black person in the cab.
Yes. So that was part of your experience being with Reginald Lewis.
Yes, and just being part of the black community really at the time, which I had not been part of until I joined with him, and then it was full throttle. We were very much involved, as you know, with the Abyssinian Baptist Church, with all these other black groups, and I really became much more aware of race and the role it plays in American society.
Yes. Now, can you just tell the audience how was how did you become eventually a very close advisor and vice president of the first African American billion-dollar company?
Well, luck played a big role, and I think you played an even bigger part by giving me the opportunity, and I want to thank you. All these years I've been very grateful to you for so many things, and I tell people anytime I meet you, I feel much better. I feel lighter, no matter how depressed I'm in. Even when you're CEO, I come into your office, I feel better after talking to you. But how did it happen? I mean, the
New York Times.
Yeah. I mean, Reg had an issue with his first leverage buyout, McCall Pattern Company, and there's a somewhat negative article in the New York Times, and through your help, I met with him in the lobby of the New York Times. I knew the reporter who'd written the story, Dan Cuff, and I found out Reg had gotten his phone number from the New York phone directory, which you could do. Everybody was listed in the phone directory. So I found his number, called him up at 6 a.m. and yelled at him after he saw the article. So the guy was pretty upset. But I knew him, and I persuaded him to give Reg a second chance. And he said he's a great guy, he's got a great story, and why don't you interview him? And I thought it was a long shot. But he agreed to do it, and he agreed to meet us in his office in the New York Times, which is like, entering the inner sanctum of this great institution, the Gray Lady, as they called it. And so we met with him there, and it turned out to be a great story. Reg was on my back for 4 days about it, but And the other key was that he didn't want it to say that anything about him being black, because he felt that this was not a black success story; it was an American success story. And so, not to have him mention that he's black, he said, "But we want a picture, just so they know I'm black," and that was going to be hard. First of all, he wanted the picture, he wanted the message there, 90-1 return for investors. I said, we don't control the papers, we don't pay these guys, so it was going to be a challenge to get it done, and I was just amazed. That it happened just the way he wanted it. And I think it was Friday morning or something. And the night before, I walked through the streets of Manhattan, because back then, at 10:30 at night or so, you could get a copy of the next day's newspaper. And I found the copy. I was really excited because I wanted to see what the story was. I got the copy of the New York Times. I sat there on the street and I opened it to the business section. It was on the second or third page, and there it was. It had his picture, and the headline was 90-1 return for investors. And I was really excited, so I ran to a phone booth, and I called your house up, and I said, "Hey, and you answered, and I said, Loida, can I talk to Reg? Because I got a copy of the story that's coming out tomorrow morning. It's a good one, and he's been waiting for this. I know he's interested." And to my surprise, he told me, "No, I'm sorry, he's asleep. I'm not gonna disturb him. He needs to sleep." And I was kind of arguing. I said, "But Loida, he wants to know what the story is. This is important." He said, "No, sorry, I'm not gonna wake him up." I said, "Okay." So I waited till the next day, and I remember Reg, I think, asked you how did he get a copy of the paper that early at night? But at those days you could the night before. So that was the start of it, and it became long-term relationship really until he passed away.
All right. So for the audience, this is about Mr. Lewis, my late husband, doing a leverage buyout of buying a company for $23 million and then working on it and selling it for a 90-1 return, meaning to say it was 23, so he sold it and got $95 million, so more or less, something like that.
Yeah.
And Butch was responsible for having his picture and the New York Times to counteract a bad picture.
Yeah.
So this is the story of a PR who is totally in the corner of his client.
Yeah.
And I think that was the start. I think, Reg Lewis was very impressed.
Yeah, he sure was.
And that's when I think he gave you an offer to...
Well, he brought Burson in. He became an accountant at Burson Marsteller. And it was important because it was my account. And I got to work in it, and I had an executive working with me. But the important thing about the article, it made him a sort of a minor celebrity on Wall Street. It became a big deal. He was black. It was a huge return for investors. And I think, I was told later, Reg told me later, that Milken saw it, Michael Milken in Beverly Hills. And Michael Milken was the master of the universe at the time, in which he was funding these multi-billion-dollar deals.
Leverage buyout.
Leverage buyouts. Borrow all this money, very little capital of your own, and then you can buy almost any company in the world. And he was turning the business world upside down. And the old-time corporate executives were really scared for their jobs. And no company was safe. And I think he saw the article. I remember someone telling me that when they walked in to meet with Drexel to talk about the Beatrice deal, which happened within months, within a month or something of that article, that all the Drexel executives had a copy of the New York Times article in their folders. So it turned out to be, PR can do certain things when it's done well.
Yes, so I just want to share with the audience that you do your job. He pounded that New York Times reporter and really stayed on it and talked to him, and they got the result. So because of that, Mike Milken, who was they call him junkman, but really he helps people buy companies on borrowed money. And within 4 months, Mike Milken backed Reginald Lewis and won the bid for $1 billion to buy Beatrice International Foods.
I think it was within 1 month. because that article came out in July. By August, he mounted a bid for Beatrice International. I think, if I remember right. And
You're right. It's
we
in
were
August.
so shocked that when he came to us at Burst and said, "Oh, he called me over to your house late at night. Said, I want to tell you about this other bid for this company, and it's 64 companies in 31 companies in 31 countries. It's called Beatrice International. It's all food companies. It's a great company." I said, I thought this guy, whoa, he's going to buy, and he's going to bid $1 billion for it. I said, yeah, sure. I'm sure you're going to win it, because I thought, how is this going to happen? I just met him. Then a month later, he's bidding $1 billion for one of the world's major companies. At the time, people don't remember it, but Beatrice had ads all over television. They had Tropicana, they had Samsonite, they had Orville Redenbacher popcorn. So there were all these ads on TV saying, "We are Beatrice." And what happened was KKR wound up doing this leverage buyout of Beatrice, and then they turned around to sell the international side in an auction. And Citibank was bidding. Bongrand, which is a big French food company, was bidding. It didn't seem like, a small group in New York that not too many people had heard of, except for that New York Times article, TLC Group, would have a chance. But it just seemed like it was meant to be, like somebody up there was pulling the strings, and it all seemed to be fate.
Well, faith, and he kicked the door open.
He kicked the door open, he pushed it open, and he never lost faith, because he always believed. I think he had everything invested in. I mean, you were there, you were right there with him, and I'm sure you took the brunt of things, and it was to you that he turned to in his most difficult moments. And I'm certain that he must have had his doubts, or he must have, before us, he was always confident, but when you're with your wife, that's when you kind of open up, and you say, then you really tell her everything. But I think you helped keep him in the game. And we were just amazed at what he was able to do, because he, lo and behold, less than a month later, in August of 1987 or so, he mounted that bid for Beatrice International. He became the first Black American to bid $1 billion for a company, and then to run a multi-billion-dollar international company. And it made him a star.
But you were right there with him, and you were responsible for that, for it being all over the papers.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest stories of my life, and it was a great orchestrated effort. And we decided to break it in. Just back then, you just had to break it in a few. We call them opinion leaders. So we decided to break it only in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times. That was it. And everybody else would read the stories on Monday morning, and they would follow their lead. So we would talk to the reporters, we'd brief them, we'd give them our sources, and then they would come out with basically what was our point of view, what was our story. And then everybody else, CBS News, Time Magazine, they just had to follow, because they didn't know anything else about the company or about him except what they saw in these three newspapers. And I remember he told me, we were doing this on a Thursday, and he said he was going to leave on the Concorde to go to Paris on Saturday. And I said, how can you leave on the Concorde? We're doing these interviews, it's the biggest story of your life. And they get the break on Monday morning. You're not giving us any time to do these interviews. The Wall Street Journal guys in Chicago, and I have to work with all these reporters. But he said, sorry, it's a family vacation. It's been long planned. It's in the south of France. And I'm leaving 10 o'clock on Saturday morning on the Concorde. So get it done then, or we're not going to do it. So we really had to rush. A lot of the interviews were done on the phone, because we didn't have time to do them in person. And the last interview was with this British guy, worked with the Financial Times, and he did the interview on the way to the airport in the back of the Bentley with Reg's driver, John, I think, driving him crazily through the streets of Manhattan on Saturday to catch the Concorde flight. And all the time, the British reporter was interviewing Reg about the Beatrice International buyout. And then we completed it. Back then, security was relatively light, we were able to talk our way into the lounge of the Concorde, and we completed the interview as he was waiting for the plane to take off. And, at the time, flying the Concorde was a big deal. But
The Concorde was this jet plane that can bring you 3.5 hours to Europe, when what usually will take 6 hours. Okay, so
7. And we flew at twice the speed of sound.
that's right. That's right. But from then on, your life was almost like a jet plane.
Yeah,
Yes.
because the story broke on Monday morning, and Reg called me from the south of France, and I told him it's like a firestorm. I mean, all of a sudden, he was the star. Everybody wanted to interview him. Everybody was calling me. And there was no way to get a hold of him except, on the phone, because he was in the south of France relaxing. So I remember he did an interview with Time magazine, but they were able to get a photo of him relaxing, reading a paper in his white tennis shorts or something in the south of France. And that became one of his photos to remember.
So tell the audience, from then on, he hired you as his PR executive of communications of TLC Beatrice.
Yes, that's right. Within a short time later, he made me an offer, basically doubling my salary, and asked me to leave Burson and to join him and start the PR department for Beatrice International, which I was really happy to do.
What can you just tell the audience what were the highlights and the lowlights?
No, maybe not the lowlights. You have to read the book. But the highlights were, I got to live in Europe for a long time. I got to fly the Concorde like it was a bus. We were taking it all the time. And eventually he wound up buying his own private plane, his jet. We went to Montreal to buy it, Challenger. So it was a life. It transported me to a different world financially. It transported me to a different world just socially, and also in so many ways. And to be able to live in Paris as a young person was a great blessing, as Hemingway used to write. Paris is a movable feast. So it was a great life. But the problems were starting. I got married soon after the.
Can you tell the audience, how did you meet your future wife?
How did I meet her? I met her when I gate crashed a party for the 4th of July fireworks. And a friend I ran into right in the middle of 42nd Street. I was coming out of the New York Public Library. I spent a lot of weekends writing. And he told me to join him and go to this party. And I said, "Are you invited?" I wasn't sure if he was invited, but he said, No, I know somebody there. So we wound up gate crashing it. And it was a great party. I met her. And at the time, I fell in love, and I remember Reg liked her. Her name was Pam, and it was like, I think that's partly what my book is about. It's the backstory, 4 people, and our lives intertwined together. You and Reg, me and Pam, and how it all turned out for each of the 4 people. So
Yes.
it was a love story at the beginning, and at the end, it was a divorce. So the book's also partly about the importance of success and career, but the things you drop along the way, climbing to the top or trying to reach that American dream, are also important, because in the end, I lost my wife. I mean, she left me, and then so at the end of the book, I say that ordinary people living ordinary lives who can come home at the end of the day, kick back, have a beer, watch a ball game, are much happier than the people who are always in social media or in the front page of the newspapers. Because I've worked with several CEOs, both here and in the Philippines, working with a CEO now, Manny Pangilinan, and I've noticed that many of the people at the top are lonely. They're not. Money doesn't buy you happiness, as they say, and I found that to be true.
Yeah,
And
because just for the audience, he had an apartment in Manhattan,
Yeah.
a vacation house
at a country home in Woodstock.
in
New York,
Woodstock.
which is nice. I miss it.
Yes, flying Concords and
The
private planes, and all the trappings
Yeah.
of successful
Yeah.
career. Yes.
And
So
the trade-off was, I lost what was important to me as It's a marriage.
Can you just say, for those who are listening, for those who want to get go to the very top, what advice would you give them so that they don't lose what is more precious than success?
Well, Barbara Bush said in her speech at Wellesley that on your deathbed, you won't regret not spending more time at the office or not doing more deals. What you will regret is not spending more time with your family. And I think that's true. I think that when you're young and ambitious, it's okay to be passionate and to work hard and to give everything your all. But in the end, it's really family that's important, your wife, your children. And you can't lose that because without that, success doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. But how do you balance that? Because at the same time, you're ambitious. You'd like to go to the very top. But it is at that end, how do you balance that with family, with wife, with children? For those who are watching, how do you balance that? Because if you let go of your ambition, then how will you be as a father to your children?
Yeah. Because
ambition and family life. That's a big conundrum.
Yeah, because work and success gives a man or a woman a big part of your identity is wrapped up in that. So that's why it's really important, and I felt it was really important to work hard and do well in the United States. But if I had to do it over, I would have spent more time with my wife and my son, and spent more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think. I think for young people, you should go give it your everything. But I think don't drop that as in your climb to the top. Don't drop those things. Don't drop the love. Don't drop the family. Don't drop your home, because that's what's going to anchor you. And when everything else is gone, as you get older, which I am now. As you get older, you find out, whoa, sayang naman yun. Maybe you could have made it work.
Mm-hmm. All right. For those ambitious young men and women, all right, please listen to what a very successful executive is saying. The balance. Don't drop what is valuable, which is love of family.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But in terms of career, you continued on. Right now, you did not just hide in the corner. You are also an executive doing great work in the Philippines. Can you please tell the audience?
Yeah, I maybe I saw the light. I'm no longer focusing on public relations or leverage buyouts or those types of things. When I moved to the Philippines, Manny Pangilinan really gave me a chance to help the country.
Manny Pangilinan is the CEO of so many companies, including the PLDT, Smart, Meralco, yes.
Philex
Mining, and then water, I think also.
Yes.
And he's
hospitals.
Yes, the Makati Medical Center and other hospitals. So he is in a way, the active Warren Buffett, except that Warren Buffett doesn't run companies. Manny Pangilinan does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was lucky to meet him, and he asked me to come back and help the country. So I wound up, today I'm running 2 nonprofits, 2 foundations for him. One is the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation.
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, the whole idea is that private companies have an obligation to try and help protect and help communities recover from disasters. We should help. We should be there before, during, and after a calamity. And a bunch of private companies came together 2009, 2010 after Ondoy, or Quetzana as it's called internationally, flooded much of Metro Manila. The president at the time, President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, asked for a public-private sector partnership that became PDRF, which Manny was the chairman, and then I became the president. And I've ran it, except for a 2-year interruption, all those years. And then we went through all these different tragedies over there. Typhoon Ondoy, which killed Typhoon Yolanda, or Haiyan, which has killed 6,000 to 10,000 people. And so we had a team there for 4 years. And then we also worked during the Marawi siege, even as the fighting was ongoing. Makati Med sent doctors and nurses, 60 people, to treat the wounded. And after the conflict ended, companies like Pepsi donated water containers to the people who had been relocated. Smart donated these e-schools in the bag so that the teachers could teach the kids under a mango tree because it's all solar powered, has all the quizzes and the plants. And we helped the Maranao women relearn the art of weaving and sell their products so they could have a steady source of income. So been doing all those things, been in a lot of typhoons. So, and then my other foundation that I run for him is on startups. And we take equity in startups. We also mentor them. We started something called QBO or Kubo, like a Bahay Kubo Innovation Hub. It's free space for startups, free mentoring, free events. And we just want to open up the eyes of young people in the Philippines to the possibilities. You don't have to go abroad. You don't have to work for a big company to do well. You can start your own company and create wealth for yourself, your family, your employees, and your country. And so that's the gospel that we preach over there. So I've been able to do that. So I've seen the light. I've become a humanitarian, sort of. And, we work closely with the UN. We've worked with the current president, President Marcos. You're familiar with the flooding situation. We've been dealing with it since 2009, 2010, when Andoy flooded Metro Manila. And we're aware of what happens and why it happens. And we briefed him a couple of times on it. So grateful for the chance. And it's very fulfilling work and very different work from what I did in the U.S.
Yes, and in fact, your work is so good that United Nations took notice. So what happened? Weren't you given an award or?
Yeah, in 2016, then Prince Charles, now the King, gave us the Prince of Wales UPS International Disaster Relief Award from Business and Community, which is his charity, and for our work in starting PDRF and for our work during Typhoon Haiyan in Tacloban. And that same year, the United Nations in Istanbul at the World Humanitarian Summit started something called the Connecting Business Initiative, based on the PDRF model in the Philippines. And now there are 25 countries that have similar types of PDRF organizations, private sector run groups that help out during disasters all around the world. And this is one area where the Philippines is ahead of everybody else. It's something that I think all Filipinos can be proud of. We built the world's first ever private sector run emergency operations center in Clark. We can track any storm in the world from there, or any earthquake, any volcanic eruption. I hope you get a chance to visit. It's really something we're proud of. And everybody from the UN and all the different foreign ambassadors have been there. They're going to hold their UN humanitarian country team meeting there this Wednesday. I won't be there, but they'll be there visiting it. But it's something that we can all be proud of. So we're number one in this area of private companies helping out during disasters. But we're also number one on the World Risk Index as the most disaster-prone country in the world. And that's something that keeps me up at night. It's a possibility of a major earthquake hitting Metro Manila or another major storm.
Oh my God. Did you just hear that? The Philippines is the number one prone disaster countries in the whole world.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years in the running. I mean, I wish we were number one in basketball, but we're number one in the World Risk Index. And but we are number one also in terms of private sector helping.
Okay, so the start of public-private partnership, but basically private enterprise in the Philippines creating an PDRF, Philippine Disaster
Resilience
Foundation. Okay, and because it was run so good, done by Butch Meily, the United States took notice, and now 25 countries?
Yes, the UN, 25 countries have
copied.
Yeah, and I myself traveled to Fiji, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Panama, to help them start their own private sector disaster networks. And others from our group, I mean, somebody's going to Ecuador later this month. Mongolia has asked us for help. So they're really turning to us, and it's something we should be proud of.
Yes, bravo, Butch. In a way, you have redeemed yourself, sort of.
Yeah, from doing all that PR,
Yes.
I respect that work.
Yes, yeah. And this is from Cam R. Were you already a writer before you needed to tell your story? And if not, how did you figure out what you wanted to say and how to say it in your book? Okay, from Manila to Wall Street, an immigrant's journey with America's first black tycoon. Okay, so that's the question from Cam R.
Well, thank you, Cam R, for the question. One, I was a writer, but not the writer of books. I was a writer of speeches, press releases. I could do those in my sleep. So I read a lot, but this is my first book, and it wasn't easy. And it turns out to be a real marketing effort to try to sell books in today's world. But I'm glad I did it. It's a story I thought it was important to tell, to remind people of things that happened and what was possible, not just in the United States, but all around the world. If you work hard and you dream big, good things can happen.
Yes, very good. Now, the next one is from Melv. Oh. What do you think it is about you that made the great Reginald Lewis have you as his PR?
Well, maybe because it was my being a Filipino. Maybe that helped. I think Filipinos are good at those things. We're good at helping out in these industries, and I think. Well, he always used to tell me he thought a lot of people were racist, but then he said, "I never sensed that with you." I think that was important to him, and I always felt, and I got this from Harold Burson, who was a PR guru for all of us, that you have to be honest with your client. You have to try your best to tell them the truth, even when it's very difficult. And I think that's true whether your client is the President of the United States or the CEO of a major company or whoever it is, the Pope or whoever. But the whole idea is you're useless as a PR person if you can't counsel your client and tell your client, give him or her your best advice and what you truthfully believe. But if you're only going to be a yes man or yes woman, if you're only going to repeat what the boss says, it's not going to be a useful function. But as one of my former colleagues said, you can't commit suicide. I mean, like with Reg, he had a heck of a temper, which we saw every day. So as a person used to tell me, you have to choose your spots. And I'm not telling you to commit suicide, but at some point you have to be able to tell him the truth.
All right. Very important for all those listening. You're servicing a client, tell the truth. As diplomatic as possible, but tell the truth. This is from Dave J. What is a fun fact about you? And what are you currently passionate about?
Fun fact about me? Mm-hmm. Well, my name Butch, where everybody asks me where that came from. It came from, my parents got it from a cartoon, Washington Post cartoon about the burglar. So maybe they were just being funny, because very few parents name their kids after a burglar. But that's the nickname.
But your nickname, your nickname. Mm-hmm.
So that's a fact. And somebody told me you'll never become president of the United States with a name like Butch. But, it stuck. So I'm never going to name anyone Butch.
But his real name is Rene.
Rene. Which I found out is the Spanish form of Reginald.
Oh,
yeah, so I don't know if it was fate or something that we wound up working together.
Interesting.
But
yes.
Fun fact, and what was the other part?
And what are you currently passionate about?
Well, I'm passionate about the book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about keeping the memory of Reginald Lewis alive.
Mm-hmm.
And keeping that going, because I think it would have been important to him not to be forgotten. And the fact that you wrote the book, I wrote the book, and we both worked on that first book and did 2 book tours.
That's true.
Back in the 90s.
Yes.
That was important, and I think it's important today because many people have just not heard of him. And it's really older African Americans who still remember him. So that's what I'm passionate about. I'm most passionate about helping the country, helping the Philippines, strengthening the relationship also between the Philippines and the United States, but Philippines in particular because we are facing so many difficult situations. And there's a lot of corruption, which I've seen firsthand, and there's a lot of problems but we're doing our best, you know. And I know there are many good people in the government and outside the government who are also doing their best. And when you look at Filipinos, I think we deserve better, no? Because, as they say, ang bait ng mga Pilipino, no? We're so devout and we're so nice. You'd think we'd have this great government. So, you know, something went wrong along the way. Maybe it was the Spanish, no? Because Latin America is like that too. But I hope I don't want to get the Spanish listeners upset. But I mean, so I'm passionate about that, about what we do in disasters and how we help and helping people. There's nothing like seeing somebody when you give them relief, or I instituted this microfinance program for waiters, janitors, and security guards. And they
So did you hear that? He also started the program lending money to the low income workers.
Yeah, the ones without a contract. And I found out that they nakasangla yung ATM cards nila. Their cards they never had their ATM cards. They were all in the possession of these 5-6 guys, no?
5-6 is you borrow 5, you pay back. Is that it? Correct?
Yeah, well, they're loan sharks. They're loan sharks. And these poor people they get paid so little, so they're always borrowing money. And so they never got, on payday, they never got to see their pay. And the one way to get them out of it was I worked with a microfinance foundation, ASA, and we instituted the program to lend them money in a regular fashion with lower interest rates. And there was also mentoring going on to advise them and their families, their wives especially. Because it's the women who are really important, we found out. In fact, microfinance companies, many of them don't lend money to men. They only lend money to the women because they found that women are more likely to help the family than men. And that many Filipino men, when you lend them money, they'll go out and have a party. I don't think that's true of all men, but many microfinance families believe that. So they only lend to the women. But that program made me feel good because I would see these waiters and janitors every day and brought smiles to their faces that they got their own ATM cards back.
That's great. Okay, so please, those listening in the Philippines, the name of this microfinance institution is what?
ASA Foundation.
ASA Foundation, ASA.
Yes.
Okay, go to your internet and you will find that address. Thank you, Butch, for that valuable information. From China M, you came from a privileged family in the Philippines, but you choose to go for a life of uncertainty in the U.S. What did you gain and lose by leaving the Philippines?
Well, I gained that sense of freedom that I talked about. It's, I'm a different person today because I came to the United States. Had I stayed in the Philippines, like many of my friends, I was like a shy nerd back then. Now I'm still maybe a nerd, but I gained a sense of confidence, which helped me later in life. And I'm not sure I would have gotten that if I didn't get the chance or the opportunity to live in the United and work in the United States and be with Americans. Because to survive here, you've got to also be confident. You learn to be aggressive. And I think as Filipinos, we're too humble. And we prefer to be in the background and not to force our way to the front. We prefer not to ask the questions. We prefer to let others do it. And I had to push against that in my own way, because you can be shy or deferential, and I think it's important to also be confident and to be aggressive in a good way. And without that, nothing's going to happen.
All right. For those listening, did you hear that? All right. Be aggressive also in a nice way, because Filipinos have a way of being nice, but aggressive or standing or advocating for yourself.
Yes,
right?
And not being afraid to speak up and to stand out, not being afraid to say, hey, magaling din ako eh. So, because I think we prefer to be in the background.
Or diminish our goodness, our brilliance.
Yes, and we have to push against that. That's one thing we have to change. And It's one of the cultural things we have to change. That's what we're also pushing for in startups, is also changing sigurista attitude. Na parents will tell you, huwag ka na umalis dyan, okay ka na dyan. You're getting a steady salary. We're trying to tell them, no, take a risk. And if you fail, okay lang. If you fail again, okay lang. Failure is okay. As long as you learn from it, you keep going. And so we push against that whole idea of being too sigurista or too comfortable, because that's what the older generation would tell us, is to, okay ka na dyan, it's a regular salary, don't take risks. And what we tell young people is to take risks.
All right, that's very brave. Okay, okay lang if you fail, because while there's life, there's hope. From Sarah L., what was the most unforgettable lesson you learned from working so closely with Reginald F. Lewis?
Well, you know, a French executive compared him to the sun, and we were all minor planets revolving around him, because when he walked into a room, everybody knew it. Of course, he had this temper too, yes, as you know. He was yelling all the time. But I learned a lot from him. I learned, I think he had this motto, this slogan, that he used very often in his speeches: keep going no matter what, which you've also discussed. That idea that you have to pick yourself up off the floor. It's like that old cartoon character, Papa. You can get knocked to the floor, whether the problem is race, whether it's a mistake you made at work. The important thing is to pick yourself up and get up and keep going, no matter what. And he'd always tell people that, and that's something I try to tell young people, that you can't let anything stop you. And if you're here in the States, there'll be problems with your race, there'll be problems with your background, or whether you can speak English as well. But you have to power your way through that and pick yourself up and keep going no matter what. So I think that's important.
Okay. Did you hear that? Very important lesson. Pick yourself up and keep going no matter what. Thank you, Butch. Now, Gina C. All right. I think this is the last question. What can you say about the major differences you've experienced working with Reginald Lewis and then Loida Lewis?
Whoa.
Who among the three of you would be most likely to crack a joke in the middle of a serious meeting?
Oh, delicado yan. I think I have to be careful with that question since Loida Lewis is here. but they're very different personalities. Reg is like a quarterback. There's a lot of yelling. The traffic was one way. He said, guys, we're going to go up that hill. Let's charge. And everybody said, yes, Reg. And we charged. With Loida Lewis, she was more of a nurturer, a counselor, a type of leader who made you feel good about yourself. And that's what I found, that different CEOs I've worked with have different personalities. And you and Reg had very different personalities. And he had one way of doing things, you had another way of doing things. And Harold Burson told me, Reg may have launched the ship, may have built the ship and launched it, but it's Loida who brought it home. Meaning you ran Beatrice, you brought it to its highest stage in terms of profits, and then you wound up selling it, bringing money to the shareholders and everybody else.
Wow, bait naman. Kakaiyak.
Well,
this October is the Filipino-American History Month, and it is so timely that you have your book and your book tour. Can you tell more about it?
yes, I'd love to have everybody take a look at it. I hope you get a chance to view it. It's available on Amazon and on BarnesandNoble.com. So, but in October, as it happens, it's Filipino-American History Month. There'll be a book tour. I'll be going on a book tour in different cities, starting, the plan I think is in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then Las Vegas, where there's a lot of Filipino-American events. I was told they're starting a Filipino town there. And there's a couple of other things, others and awards, 10 Outstanding Filipinos Awards program then in October as well.
TOFA. That's a TOFA also in Las Vegas.
And then from there, I'm doing some schools. I hope to do Harvard and my alma mater, University of Florida, and then Virginia State, where the business school is named after Reg Lewis. So I'm coming out, then I'm doing an audiobook, which, believe it or not, I was able to, they say I can record it in Manila. I didn't know we could do it, but we're recording it. So I hope the audiobook will be out sometime in October or sometime in the fall. So stay tuned. Hope you get a chance to take a look at the book, and I hope you like it.
All right. So, for ladies and gentlemen, be sure you order from Amazon.com or from BarnesandNoble.com his book, From Manila to Wall Street, An Immigrant's Journey with America's First Black Tycoon. That's my beloved Reginald Lewis. So here you have it. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Butch. This is the Loida Lewis Podcast. Let's live, laugh, love, and learn together. Okay. Butch.
But I did say
Ang galing.
who cracked the joke.
The Loida Lewis Podcast, hosted by Loida Lewis, is produced by the creators of Over a Glass or Two, Jesse and JV, executive produced by Laura Nicholas Olace. Rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for a chance to be featured on a future episode. Have a question for Miss Loida? Just email us on askloidalewis@gmail.com. Your question might make its way to a future episode. Subscribe on all major platforms to never miss a beat. Thank you for listening to the Loida Lewis Podcast. Let's live, love, laugh, and learn together